came up.
Oh, I gotta really try hard.
Shut it down!
Somehow it's the best.
After the credits.
A YumChunks podcast.
YumChunks!
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to episode 32 of After the Credits, a YumChunks podcast. I am Matt Chewy. With us here tonight, we have Vince Rizzo. How are you doing tonight?
Excellent. Thank you, Matt.
Good to hear. We also have Chris Schmidt. What's going on with you, Chris?
Hello, gentlemen.
Hey, Sean. How's it going, Sean?
I could do this all day.
Oh, well, we only have, we only have a couple hours. Much longer than we should have, so.
Chewy, am I allowed to say that's America's hindquarters?
You are, yes.
Okay, good.
But save it for when the time is right.
Okay.
You'll know when that time is.
You only get one. Everybody gets one. All right. Well, tonight we're talking about what did we call it? Avengers game.
Ender's Avenger game.
Good. Ender's Avengers game. Yes, Avengers Endgame, the big culmination of 22 Marvel movies. Finally, it's done with. We'll talk about that later, but until we do that, let's play a game called the Chunkfire Stories, where we ask...
I just love
Chris...
that it's still that name. We're still going with it.
This is the third or fourth time we've used that name, right? It's a pattern now. It's solidified.
Now, yeah.
It's the Chunkfire Stories, the game where we ask Chris Schmidt, hey, how you been?
I've been good. Thanks for asking. And I have not done much but work. Hey, Vince, how you been?
Oh, no.
Hey. Vince
No, that's not... No, Chris has to do... He's got to do at least one thing.
Give us one little
One thing, Chris.
Give us a little story, Chris.
Vince will come back to you.
All gathered around the fire, huh?
The Chunkfire. Yeah, we made Vince build it.
I mean, I haven't really watched anything recently other than this movie thing that we're about to talk about. I've just been busy. It's approaching E3 time at work, so it's time to get ready. Well,
tell me this: how's your dog? How's your puppy?
He's alive. I consider that a small victory.
A small victory, I guess.
Chris, I was expecting a lot more from that question. I'm just disappointed.
He kept an animal alive, guys. This is a big step for him.
He's great.
Wow.
He's growing big. We have a DNA test because we're now doubting that he's 100% corgi. But we love him all the same, regardless of what the results are.
Are you really?
That's
Is
so
that
progressive of you guys.
Yeah.
No, but that's like a real thing that you're choosing to do with your life?
Yes.
I wasn't expecting it to turn so harsh.
Wow. So judgmental, Vince.
I support your
Vince,
decision.
Vince, how are you doing? Because that was really aggressive. Is everything all right?
Tell us where this anger's coming from.
I've never heard of that.
Vince, you're speaking from a place of anger. Where's this anger coming from?
Vince?
No, for real. How's it going?
I took a DNA test. It turns out I'm not 100% corgi either.
That's all right. You got a little bit of
I'm sorry.
Jack Sparrow.
Color me
you got
surprised.
a little Jack Sparrow in you.
Hey.
Hey, not since my trip to Singapore, do I? I don't want to talk about that. Anyway, so what I did when I was talking to you last was I've done nothing at all. Except that's not true. I've actually been preparing really hard for a disc golf tournament that I have this weekend. And other than working at Costco, that's all I've been doing nonstop is pretty much practicing for that. It's going to be sweet.
Oh, it's coming up? It hasn't happened yet?
Yeah, it's coming.
Oh.
Starts on Friday. And it's a huge tournament, biggest one in San Diego. There's going to be like a whole camera crew walking around filming everything, and it's going to be quite
cool.
an event.
Are all the big disc golf stars going to be there?
A lot of them.
Dusty McWarren, Schnauzer Smith.
Yeah, you're going to have Smickles McFlanker and
He's going to be,
Wonky.
wow, it's big.
Yeah, and Wonky McGee. He'll be there.
I can't.
Wonky's got a mean spin.
Lion Forest.
But yeah,
good.
That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm preparing for.
That sounds great. That sounds fantastic. I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
But you are very skilled at such a sport, so you most likely will not need it. Go forth. my son.
I could
He'll
use some luck,
donate
though,
all the
to be honest, 'cause
proceeds
they're all
to
really good.
the YumChunks.
Excellent.
I'll donate to the Corgi DNA fund to make sure all of our corgis are 100% corgi.
It's already been paid all up front. So just give me the money.
That we're all
Spare no
$1,000.
expense.
Just give me $1,000.
You splice in some frog DNA into that corgi. That's why it's not 100%.
Oh man.
Life
All
finds
right.
a way.
I don't know where to go with that. I was trying to make a Jurassic Park reference, but I got nothing.
Not everything you say needs to be a Jurassic Park reference. It's okay.
I'm pretty. Who
It's fine.
says that? I
We'll-
think
we'll
it
still like
very much has to be. Okay, thanks God. I was worried.
Okay. All right.
Sean!
I was waiting for Vince to ask somebody how
Vince,
they did.
part of the responsibilities of Chunkfire Stories is you passing on.
Do you know how Chunkfire Stories works? This is what you do next.
Sorry, guys. That was the corgi part of me.
Oh, I see.
Just
Alright.
chaos.
Hey, Sean.
Hey, Vince,
Hey,
what's
Sean.
up?
I'm passing you a story in this old Chunkfire. Give it to me.
Never say any of that again.
Just so good at what we do.
Well, I'm going to ignore the intro to me talking and just go with it. Well, I'm back in Southern California after my glamorous trip to Arkansas.
What was that?
Wow.
3 weeks? I think you said it was 3 weeks.
Yeah, I was there about 3 weeks. So we finished a movie.
Wow.
It's
Okay.
the next entry in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I worked on it.
Nice.
Oh, good. I believe you.
Good. Don't question it. Yeah, so finished the film, and that was. We talked a little bit about it last time, but yeah, that was a crazy experience. Super fun and stressful, but just can't say I've done anything like it. So that was great, and had a lot of fun stories, and met a lot of fun people. And got to be in a southern town in the middle of Arkansas, which was great. And everyone there is really friendly, but I kind of got the both worlds of the small town being exposed to Hollywood-ish, even though we weren't really bigwigs, but we're from Hollywood. So there were the people who were just trying to take advantage of us, and then the people who were just really starstruck and excited that we're there, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think so. Culture shock about.
Yeah, and there's just lots of people. Couple local stories got out that we were filming at the hospital there, and so the last couple days there'd be people driving around the parking lot trying to see us film or trying to get in, and just teenage boys in their car. Are you guys all filming a movie up in there? I'm not trying to sound derogatory. That's what they're. Is there any celebrities up there? Is David Arquette up there? Because David Arquette's in the movie, and just can we meet him? And just trying to politely well, we're filming right now. We can't have you that kind of thing. But they was really sweet, and it was just kids. And then the second to last day, we had a wrap party at a skating rink in town. We rented out the rink, and the family who owned the rink, they were really nice, but again, they were just ooh, big Hollywood people coming in, even though none of us were recognizable. But when we came in, one of the kids, teenage boy, he had a copy of the PS3 game Dead Island. It has nothing to do with anything. But he wanted everyone on the crew, again, no one recognizable or famous or no one, to sign his copy of Dead Island because he couldn't find anything else for us to sign.
Maybe it's his prized possession. That's his favorite thing that he owns.
Confirmed, Sean was filming the Dead Island movie.
No comment. So it was just really funny, just that, just very, very innocent and, welcoming and happy, just the idea of a movie being filmed there. And I don't mean to sound that as some sort of jaded, whatever, condescending, but it's still just kind of funny too.
Oh no, you definitely sound like you're from California.
Well, but if I say I don't mean to sound like that, then
that's good. You're being self-aware.
Do I exonerate myself? Right?
You're at least it's better than being unaware.
That's true. At least I'm aware of my just eliteness, or false eliteness.
Yes.
Anyway, so that was fun, but I'm back now. And then the best part of the whole trip, though, was on my plane ride back, I watched a movie called Holmes and Watson.
Oh, no.
And it was everything it was cracked up to be. It was awful. It was really, really bad. It was a really bad movie.
Yeah.
Was it funny at least?
No, it wasn't. It was...
Oh, man.
I can't even describe it. You know what it reminded me of? I can't remember the name, but those spoof movies, the really bad, like, scary movie, or not
like
scary
disaster
movie, epic
movie
and disaster movie.
Like epic movie.
It reminded me of that. Like, and that's never good. It was...
But it had Will Ferrell.
I know,
How could it be
and
that bad?
I was like, just like
Will
Step
Ferrell's-
Brothers, but it was...
Will Ferrell's been in plenty of bad movies, but the thing is that I think the whole like writing and production team was the same as like Step Brothers and all those, like back when Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly were like cranking out those few years when they were cranking out really funny comedies. Like, I think it had that whole team. I don't know what happened. What happened?
I don't know. It's a good question, and it was only 90 minutes. But it was on a plane, and the whole time, I don't love flying, so I was like, hopefully this will make the time go by faster. But it made it go longer. I was like, God, this plane.
The last time I was on a plane was from Boston, and they had Batman versus Superman on it, and we were like, oh yes, good, this will take us to the end of the flight. But then we still had to watch Batman Superman though, and I don't know.
If they force played it on everyone's screen.
It didn't help, is what I'm saying, is the point.
Yeah,
it didn't
exactly. Well, in any case, don't watch that movie. It was really bad. But that's it for me. That's all I've been up to. What about you, Matt? What stories can you enthrall us with?
What stories I bring to the fire?
Yeah.
Way back on the Chunkies episode, I mentioned that the school I teach at, we were doing Les Miserables for our spring musical. That just opened last week, and it's bittersweet for me because I kind of had to participate from the sidelines this time because I'm on work leave. But I got to go see it on Saturday night, and I'm super proud of what they did, and like super impressed, and almost kind of like, oh man, they didn't need me. Like I'm a little redundant, but they did a great job with it, and so I'm super happy about that. And then we have another week, so there's 3 more performances. I, much in the vein of when my wife and I did the Macaulay Culkin marathon, we are currently doing a What Up With That marathon. We discovered that on Hulu, they have every episode of SNL that has a What Up With That sketch. So that's
how many are there?
There are 9 of them.
So I feel like that marathon is much less painful and much quicker than Macaulay Culkin.
Well, when I say marathon, we're not back to backing them. We're just like a few nights a week picking an episode of SNL to watch that has a What Up With That. It's interesting though because those are right around 2010, so it's been about a decade since these episodes, and it's interesting watching old SNLs and seeing how comedy has changed in a decade, and like what kind of jokes and what kind of sketches they don't do anymore, or what they still do, and it's really interesting to see how writing shifts even in just a decade. So I don't know. I would recommend going back and watching some of those. It's just kind of interesting. And then finally, I went to a pre-screening of a movie called Booksmart. Have you guys heard of that?
I just got an email asking if I wanted to watch a pre-screening of that movie.
It's Olivia Wilde's directorial debut.
Okay.
And then it has Jason Sudeikis in it, and the other SNL guy. He's MacGruber. I can't remember his name.
Will Forte.
Yeah, Will Forte's in it a little bit. And then also Carrie Fisher's daughter, Billie Lourd, is in there. She's pretty funny. She's like a scene stealer. But the movie is basically Superbad. Like it is plot point by point, beat for beat. It's Superbad. The 2 mains are girls, and people have been calling it Girl Superbad, but that doesn't really like. It's basically just everything about it is Superbad. But I was impressed by how well they were able to adapt it to like Gen Z. Like being a high school teacher right now, like I feel like they got how teenagers act really down. Like it's pretty accurate for most of it. So it's kind of like I guess they probably just make this movie every few years or every decade or so for whatever high schoolers. You know what I mean? Like this movie just pops up every once in a while. So
They just called something different, and
This-
it's the same.
Yeah, but it's funny and it's well written, and it doesn't come out for another month. But when it rolls around, it's not, it's worth a watch. It's a good time
That's cool.
if you like that kind of thing.
Is it going to have wide? It's going to be a wide release though.
Yeah, it comes out like May 24th or something like that. It's towards the end of May, so yeah. I mean, hey, Chris, you got that invite? You
Yeah.
said? I mean, you could do worse for an evening, and it's free. So I mean, like I would I mean, definitely if you have an invite to one of the free screenings, I definitely recommend.
I also got one for that new Seth Rogen Charlize Theron movie.
I do not know what you're talking about.
The where
The romantic comedy where she's the president.
Yeah.
or whatever?
I've not even heard of that before. Huh, cool. I mean, hopefully I'll get an invite to that too. I like getting invites to free things. So
Long Shot. It's called Long Shot.
that's
what it's
yeah,
called.
that one.
I had heard that title, but I didn't know what the movie was. It's weird. Yeah. So yeah, that's what I've been up to. And I think we've gone around all the way around the chunk
That's
fire.
a cozy
yes.
fire. That's
I
a
believe
cozy
so.
fire we
I'm gonna-
nursed.
Now that we've established that we've cemented chunk fire as our segment, I'm going to be using that word just as often as I can.
Even outside of the context of this podcast.
Oh, absolutely.
Good.
Yes.
Chunk,
Yeah.
chunk,
And
chunk,
anytime
chunk.
I can. Yes. But while I'm thinking about all the uses of how I'm going to insert that word into my day-to-day vocabulary, I'll go ahead and pass this along to... should I pass it to Sean or Chris? Who's the next person that needs to talk?
We'll
Sean.
fight for that honor. Oh, I
Sean,
guess
what are we doing next?
Okay, well, we have a big old plate in front of us because we're going to be talking about Avengers Endgame. Before we get into that, the obviously obligatory spoiler warning for not just this movie, but
Every movie.
every movie ever
every
made.
movie, future, past, present. We're going to spoil Spider-Man, Far From Home, everything.
Yep. So
spoil
just watch
Shazam
this
2.
movie after you've seen every other movie ever, and then you'll be
Okay.
fine.
right.
But before we jump into the discussion, we'll do a brief recap again. Chris, I hear you've been working on a poetic recap. For
Oh,
us
it's
all.
beautiful. Are you ready? Is
Okay.
everyone ready?
Yeah.
I'm ready. I'm so ready. I've been ready this
All
whole
right.
time.
Well, here we go. It all started when Purple Homer Simpson killed 50% of all life in the universe. And it is up to some of the Avengers to find a way to make it right. But first, they must cry and wallow in self-pity for an hour. Eventually, the only Avenger that matters, Ant-Man, somehow gets free and plans a time heist. Time heist. It's just so fun to say. Time heist, time heist, time heist.
It is a fun word to say. or phrase.
After a successful time heist, Thanos follows the Avengers into the present, and big fights commence. A little while later, Iron Man commits mass genocide to kill all the bad guys, and we all lived happily ever after.
I mean, not Iron Man.
Yeah, that's true. And not all the bad guys.
Also, like,
Close enough.
also nobody lived happily ever after. The world's still screwed up.
That's my summary. That's my
fairly
summary
accurate.
of the movie.
Well, Chris, I will say that is the best summary we've done so far. So I commend you,
Nice
Chris.
job. We did
Nice.
it.
See then.
All right.
We're getting
Cool.
better. All right. Well, our discussion needs to be the same amount of time as the film. So everyone strap in for a 3-hour discussion of this movie.
No, we're joking. We're cutting it off at 45
so.
minutes. We got 25 minutes left. All right.
25. Oh God.
No,
Oh, God, oh,
I'm
God,
joking.
oh, God.
No, I'm joking.
Okay. So, yeah. I mean, I don't know.
What do we do? First
where to even
impressions?
begin? But let's just go with. I assume we all hated this movie. It was awful, and there were so many flaws, and it was so stupid. And Vince, how did you feel about this movie?
God, where do I begin?
Well-
I mean,
Just first impressions. Limit
Okay.
yourself.
no, the movie was fantastic. It's one of those things where it was like, it was less of a movie and more of like just like a cinematic achievement. Like looking at it as just like one like single movie, I feel like is kind of a disservice to what, you know, the last 11 years of the MCU kind of built towards in making this movie.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like an event. I don't know, going there on a packed theater first day it came out was just like, it reminded me of like why I like going to these big movies. And just looking at the movie, it's like nothing can top this in terms of like sheer spectacle, at least for that last act. I mean, it's just like it was an experience. I was emotionally and physically drained afterwards.
Yeah,
that's good.
Good stuff. Chris, thoughts?
It's funny that Vince used the term event to describe it because I literally had that written down. Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a good movie. Not great. It was good. A lot of stuff to like, a lot of stuff I didn't like, but I mean, it is a crowning achievement to be 22, 23 movies later and still have this thing going, even though this isn't the end of even the phase. But yeah, no, it was good.
I thought our praise of Shazam would soften your cold heart, Chris, but apparently not.
Well, we'll get into it. I mean, I
all right, we will get into it. Anyways, Matt.
Yeah, I loved it. It was a lot of fun. It was great as a finale to the Infinity Saga. I'm not really disappointed by any way that they wrapped up any of the stories. I'm pretty satisfied with most of the resolutions, and the couple things they didn't resolve I liked. I was surprised by how not action heavy it was. Like it really only had one real big action set piece with small bursts of action throughout. So I was surprised that they were able to pace it well and keep me interested. It didn't feel like 3 hours to me. If I had a couple minor criticisms, I think that it felt a little clip showy to me in the time travel act of the movie. Like I really liked the whole Back to the Future concept of it, but I did feel like for a little while it was real focused on like it had to be hey, remember all the last 22 movies, just a tiny bit. And then it also, this always comes up, but there's like, when we get into the logistics of the time travel and the universe, there's always some questions that like I know I'm not supposed to be asking because it's nitpicky but it's hard for me to kind of ignore the logic of some of those things. But we'll talk about that later when we get into the timeline and all that junk. So, but overall, yeah, of course, obviously, I love the movie. Just minor nitpicks I have with it. Sean, what about you?
Yeah, agree with everything. I think Vince, everyone who said, his event. I mean, I think there's so much you could say about plot holes or potential, some sort of character stuff that maybe people may not have been completely satisfied with, or small things here and there. But and those are all valid. I'm not discrediting any of that stuff. But I think, it's.
It sounds like
I just said those are valid.
I'm out.
Hey, I was also not completely glowing. I mean,
it's
not
I guess
just Chris.
For anyone, I'm just saying that like the sheer, I don't even know what to say. It's spectacle. That not even spectacle is the right word. The sheer event of it all,
Right.
is so incredible. I guess it's the whole time. It's like you kind of have this. I had this kind of giddy grin on my face, and most of it was because of what was happening on screen and the characters I've grown to love and stuff. But part of it was just the thought in the back of my mind that like this is happening, and they pulled it off. And I'm not trying to like overshadow the form over content, but in a certain level, like there's cinematic achievements. You have whatever Citizen Kane and Gone with the Wind and Star Wars and Lord of the Rings and whatever big movies, and this is by far up there. Like there's no doubt in this is a achievement. This is a pinnacle in movie making. For so many reasons, which we could get into. I mean, I think that kind of boils down to why you kind of come to the movies. They basically made the impossible seem possible.
Right.
And to me, that just like summed up the whole experience for me.
I think and I don't expect this to happen, but I think that if the MCU were to crash and burn after this, if everything just fell apart, worst case scenario, you would still have a 22 movie saga made of different movie sagas that is unlike anything that's ever been made before, that by all accounts should have failed, and there should have been multiple failure points. It exceeded every expectation, and you have this chunk of cinema history that they pulled off somehow, and I will always be happy about that, and I will always be amazed by that. So even if this at the end of the day doesn't end up being my favorite Marvel movie or whatever. I mean, just when you look at this as an ending and everything as a whole, it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, to me, it's, could this film or this whole process have been better? I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. But it could have been worse.
I think
it could have been worse.
It could have been a way worse. It could have been monumentally worse, and I think we would be selfish to ask for it to have gone better. I mean, I think it's amazing that it went this well, and it went really well. It's not even like a take what we can get situation. It's like it went really well.
Exactly. Well, then let's kind of get into what were some of our favorite parts, or you guys' favorite parts. I mean, again, it's 3 hours of content, and ultimately it's hard to even dissect just this film without just naturally bringing in so much from the other films. But I kind of compare it to like almost like a buffet, like a Vegas buffet, which you guys are all familiar with.
Yes.
Like there's just so much there. And you want to like kind of eat it all, but you could only hold so much in your mental capacity. And you just go, well, I'm going to come back. And next time I come back, I'm going to focus. I'm going to try this out. I'm going to try, just like I've seen the film twice now. And it's a shame Ryan couldn't be here because he's actually seen it 4 times. But I just feel like every time I go watch this film, I'm going to focus on, I'm going to get something else out of it. And it, you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And I've only seen it once, so I'm going to try to see it again as soon as I can. But yeah, well, it's still on you. What else did you really like about it?
I think I liked just the unexpected payoffs on so many levels. There's the stuff that we kind of knew was happening, but I just love the unexpected things that you didn't need, but just to me, it added layers on layers to make it more than just a good film. I think it's a great film. And those elements to me helped do that and helped build the characters instead of it just being simple resolutions, just we win or whatever the case. There's complexity and depth to a lot of the character resolutions and some of the thematic stuff as a whole.
I would like to say, just kind of going off of that, like in the way that like we kind of say that like TV is the new like way the medium is going in terms of like story structure and how like great stories are being told. It's like this almost felt like the last hurrah or kind of something for like cinema in a way that like this story took the time that like a great TV show takes the time to tell its story, and it did so for 11 years, and this just felt like the great series finale. I guess is how I would describe it, more than just like the end of like a saga of movies. It really just felt like a series finale of a great, fantastic, well-written TV show.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, 22 episodes is a season of a TV show. Any others? What's kind of other specific stuff did you guys kind of jump out at you or you like the most about it?
Well, you kind of mentioned it a little bit, but and I know I cited this as maybe a criticism of the movie, but the Back to the Future middle act of the movie. But I also, at the same time, I had a giddy smile on my face during that whole section of the movie because I'm a Marvel fan, the MCU fan, and not only was that fun, but it was also it was kind of surprising the parts of the MCU that they chose to go back to. Particularly, I think everyone can agree, Thor 2. Which I've always been a fan of. So I was excited to go back to Thor 2. I like that when Thor says, like, oh yeah, it's not an Infinity Stone, it's like a goo. Because you always have to explain that. That always comes up. But the main thing I really liked about that second act of the movie is just like how it adds more additional context to other things that already happened. Like, in particular, they went back before the beginning of Guardians of the Galaxy, so you see character, you know what's about to happen, but they don't. And then some of the storylines, you get to see what's happening on this room over here while the characters we know are doing this. Like, I really like that. And a lot of those things that they did, or like when S.H.I.E.L.D. shows up at the end of Battle of New York to take the staff, you go, oh yeah, of course it would be evil Hydra S.H.I.E.L.D. Like, that's info that we didn't know yet when we saw the first Avengers movie. We didn't know that S.H.I.E.L.D. was half Hydra, and now we do, and it's like, that's a neat little... It makes it all feel more like a universe. I'm constantly impressed by how they're able to go back and add these little, like, connective tissues to make everything still feel like it's all one story. And this being the finale of every story, like I feel like that was a strong suit, and they did it really well, and in a way that paid homage and also aided the storyline. So
yeah.
I don't know, Chris, what were some of your favorite things?
No, I mean, I think
this thing?
the way you put it is pretty much what I'd go with as well. There was a lot of good. Like the middle of the film felt very much like a Marvel film, right? It was just like this fun kind of ride. You know, everybody's jumping around. Time heist. You're not gonna have fun with a heist.
And then you throw time in there.
But
yeah,
the one note, because I do agree, I liked returning to Thor 2. That was an interesting return. I enjoyed returning to the Battle of New York. The one thing I didn't enjoy returning to was the planet that Hawkeye and
oh yeah, well,
because I mean we were just there, right? Like that's not really going back in time. I mean, I guess it is, but it's just like we were just there. There's no nostalgia element to that place. It just felt really weird.
Well, I guess the counter argument to that is, does every single one of those things have to function as nostalgia? that's that too. But also from a plot standpoint, like there was no other point in time they could have gone to get the stone by the rules of its own universe.
I get that. It's just I don't know. It just felt, because once again it was only like a year ago that we went through that scene almost playing out almost exactly the same as before, right? So because you still the same rules applied. So the scene, the environment, everything was just too fresh. It just felt a little sluggish. But I did like seeing other elements of like the Battle of New York, like the Ancient One. She was up on her little place, just tearing things
that was
up.
cool.
That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. It's like, oh yeah, well of course she would have been there secretly fighting. We just didn't know that she was there yet. That's the kind of stuff I really liked that this movie bothered to go out of the way for.
Obviously, there was a lot to like in the final battle. I think there was a lot to dislike in the final battle as well. I think really where the movie kind of wasn't that good for me mostly was the beginning.
Why is that, Chris?
What part of the beginning? I mean, I thought
by the beginning I mean is like
great.
Once they beheaded Thanos, and then it was like the 5. I think it was after the 5-year time skip, right? I felt like that part.
Okay.
I don't know. Just a lot of characters were acting mopey, but it didn't feel really deserved. Not that I didn't know that it was deserved, but it didn't, like the way it was coming across. Not through the acting, or maybe sometimes through the acting, but like through the story, it was just like, bleh.
I have a very specific thing that I had an issue with that part of the movie. I know that Sean asked us what our favorite things in the movie were, and now we're criticizing, but if I may detour for a second, and again, this is a real minor nitpick, but I don't feel like, and I could be wrong because this has never happened before, but I feel like 5 years later, like the world would be a little less I Am Legend than it was. And I feel like this definitely film language shorthand. It's like, look, we need to establish that we're living in an apocalypse still, and people know what apocalypses on film look like, so just make it look like a zombie one, I guess. I felt like there was a lot of that imagery, like when they showed all the boats in the heart, and everything's on a gray filter, so it's kind of like, well, it's not a nuclear apocalypse. Wouldn't it be all cloudy? But I feel like it's the filmmakers going like, look, it's an apocalypse. We don't have a lot of time to establish how the world works now 5 years later. But I feel like it's more complex than what they depicted. And I hope that, I don't want to get too much into this, but I hope that later on down the road, whatever comes next for Marvel, we see more Fallout. We usually do with Avengers movies, but this is one where I'm like, I need a movie that shows Fallout. I need another good, like, shield-centered, government-centered Captain America or a Black Panther where they talk about world governments. Or I need something like that to.
I mean, it's probably going to
make
be
sense
the
of that
Spider-Man movie, right? That's why Spider-Man.
I don't think so.
The end of Phase 3 or whatever, right? Is because it probably will involve a lot of Fallout.
I think Spider-Man, just based on, I mean, the thing is, they cut trailers to sell it the way they want to, but I think Spider-Man is one of the worst ones they could possibly use to establish what the world scene looks like, because the trailer from what it looks like is like kids going on a high school vacation to Europe, and it's fun, and it's John Hughes, and it's quirky 80s style, and I'm like, well, half those kids would be 5 years old. What?
Yeah,
5
is
years
anybody
older.
else confused by that? I don't understand how that works.
It's now 2023 in the 2024 in the film series. So I feel like Spider-Man, especially because it's run by Sony, and I don't trust them to not, like, they did the wrong time jump in the last movie, and I don't trust them to connect all the strings as well together. So I'm really nervous about that one being the next one after this movie. But because I just feel like it's going to brush over a lot of that.
Well,
I
mean, this kind of plays into a thing I noticed in the movie, and I mean, I kind of didn't like it, but I don't necessarily hold it against the movie. Is
Sure.
the amount of like convenience factor that comes into play during the movie, right? Like, in the sense of like Peter Parker and his school, we already know that all the specific people from the Homecoming movie, right? They were all dusted. Just like all the ones that he interacted with, the brat kid, MJ, Ned, they, even though it was supposed to be at random 50%, all of the key people got dusted. So when it comes time for Far From Home, they're all still in high school. They're all the same age, right? Like,
yeah, it's just like, it's so much bigger of a world shifting event to have to clean up than something like the first two Avengers movies.
I guess, sorry, can you, maybe I think I'm a little confused. So when you started off what you were talking about the apocalypse, you saying you want it to be more apocalyptic?
No, he was saying it's really hard to demonstrate the type of apocalypse that happened without going to the extremes visually, which like he was saying. Okay, go ahead.
I was going to say, not even visually, but story-wise. Explain how the government works. Explain what the Avengers' role is.
Yeah,
explain what we're doing about the 50%. There's just like, I have questions about this apocalypse, but I feel like the movie gave me a generic visual zombie apocalypse just to shut me up. You know what I mean?
I guess what I'm saying, for me, I really liked the 5-year time gap. I wanted more of it, and it sounds like maybe that's what you wanted too. You wanted more of it, maybe.
I guess, like, I don't know. It just... It feels a little clumsy to me.
They had plant overgrowth. It's like, come on, 50% of the planet is still hundreds of millions of people. Like, there would not be. It would not be
3.5 billion, but okay.
Okay, well there you go. I don't know how many people are alive right now.
7 billion, roughly.
Well then, there you go. Like 3 billion people would not result in the planet falling apart.
But it wasn't falling.
I mean, there was overgrowth.
They are still
everywhere.
playing Fortnite.
There was overgrowth.
A world that still plays Fortnite, the planet has not fallen apart.
No, all the game studios closed down because there are more important things to do. So whatever game was popular in 2019 is now the only game that anyone
plays anymore. That's what I'm saying. They're still playing. They were playing video games.
Man, that's an apocalypse. People are only playing Fortnite now.
Well, I mean, it's not as much apocalypse as I Am Legend, though, is what I'm saying. Like, like the society was still functioning.
I mean, so bear with me here. If you think back to Ant-Man, which I have a lot of problems with his revival, but you remember he's walking down the street. Everything, the abandoned cars, overgrown plants everywhere, like weaving in and out of things. One kid on a bike being super awkward and creepy and not speaking. Right?
Yeah, like it just happened. Like if it had just happened.
Yeah,
that's what it felt like to me.
I kind of, I don't know. To me, I didn't have any issue with how the characters were acting. If anything, I just wanted more of it to kind of just see more of this world in this state. I mean, you also had them going to they put up a monument to all these. It wasn't like the world was in shambles. They had the wherewithal to build monuments, and people were tourists. Like, there's still tourists in this world. Right, it's not a apocalypse.
That's a good point.
Like, it's not so fallen apart that people don't still have lives and aren't playing video games and aren't still drinking and aren't still like, half the population died. That, like, the little opening with Captain Cap in that circle is just like, you can't just get over that. It's ingrained in every fiber of your being, but you know, there's still things that you do.
Well, then my point still stands, though. Then it was really awkward of them to show that one street and everything the way they did.
And why are the lights turned off at their support group meeting? It's because they were trying to make it look like a zombie apocalypse, and everything has to be dark and gray. Turn the lights on. Unless you didn't fix the lights, turn the lights on. It's so
mean
dark
in
there.
Scene specifically?
That and other moments in the movie where it's like, this is gray and dark just because, again, like I said, it's shorthand and people understand what visually what an apocalypse is supposed to look like.
I thought they kind of set that up though at the end of Infinity War with the color, like after he snapped his finger, it turned gray, just like everything. If you watch the end, as everyone's dusting, the sky is getting gray.
It was part of his power.
Again, it's just a visual metaphor to represent that. I don't know.
It's how he changed reality.
No, Sean, I understand it. I just don't love it.
Oh, I mean, I suppose.
Yeah.
I never thought it was anything like I Am Legend. Like, to me, I never thought zombie apocalypse while watching the movie, though.
I
mean, there's no zombies, and everyone was fine.
A couple other notes real fast before we move on about the convenience factor. Also going back to the Ant-Man thing, was the rat running over the control pad.
Yeah,
being the cop-out to bring him back. And I say cop-out because they, like, how else were they going to... I mean, it would have made more sense to me if it was somebody kind of trying to loot the car, right? Or whatever, than a rat running over it.
I honestly, that doesn't bother me even a little bit because it took 5 years for that coincidence to happen. You know what I mean? Like, if it had happened immediately after...
On top of that van its battery would have been dead. But,
I guess they probably had some special...
We also don't know that the time machine, whatever quantum machine, was connected to the car battery. I mean, we don't know what was powering it conveniently, so it's fine. I mean, again, if he had been resurrected before the 5-year time jump, it would have been a little. It would have been like it would have reminded me of the beginning of Thor 3, where like end of Thor 2 they make such a big deal about Loki being on the throne, and at the beginning of Thor 3 they're like, nah, never mind. Like I'm happy that it took 5 years for that one rat to find that button.
I guess it just would have been more interesting if he found his own way out. But that's neither here or there. That's just my opinion.
I agree it's convenient, but I didn't mind.
That's not something. The other thing that the movie reminded me of right off the bat was once again the convenience of the snap, right? So you got Hawkeye, right? He's out with his family. He's got 3 kids or so, and then his wife, and he's out there all in their picnic, and once again, every single one of them got dusted but him.
Yeah, well, he just got unlucky. I mean, that's the odds. I mean, not everybody lost their entire family. Some people didn't lose anybody.
I know, but it's just. And once again, these are all minor things. I know them. They don't affect my opinion of the movie very heavily at all. It's just things I noticed where it's just like, oh yeah, I guess thinking back, every one of the Avengers was very clearly targeted and what would motivate them the most.
Well, yeah, it's a movie.
I know.
It's a story.
I know, but it just stood out, right? It was, I don't know.
Fine, Chris. Shazam was a better movie.
I'm not even saying that.
No, that's okay. We're saying that. Now we can move on. Sean, get us back on track here. What other talking points do we got?
Well, since we're talking about plot stuff, let's just kind of throw out other issues. Because I agreed, like, that ultimately any of those kind of minor plot holes or quote-unquote plot holes,
contrivances maybe,
do a disservice kind of in the general discussion. But I do think that we're talking about if you were thinking about them. And the two things that kind of I had questions about was when Nebula, the evil Nebula, goes to Thanos and goes, oh, I could trick them and I'll be able to go back in time and fool them and blah blah blah.
Uh-huh.
But she only had one vial of Pym particles that she stole. So that allowed her to go back into the future. But how did then she get Thanos to go back in the future?
I have that note. It's just a question. They don't address it.
I'm not saying it's a hole. I'm just saying, did I miss something?
No, you didn't miss anything. There's just no answer. Okay. They could probably say they split the vial. I don't know.
It's again very very minor thing, but it was something I questioned. And then the other thing that this is a general question, bigger question about the time travel, and time travel discussions are always pretty fun. And I thought they actually did a really good job of just, especially like Bruce's kind of talk to everyone. It's like, no, you don't. No, that's not how it works. But they did a pretty good job, I thought, of like kind of like leaving each thing they go into the world and where you could like pretend that it actually happened in the original films, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like even when Cap fights himself, he then's touched with the scepter. implying that he got his mind erased so he wouldn't remember the fight, or you know what I mean, like, except for the fact that Thanos goes in the future. And how does that make any sense?
Well, they already said that it wasn't adjusting the past the way that every other movie does, right? They really drove that point home. And so them going into the past wasn't like they were actually going into the past, right? They were altering the whole timeline, essentially. But just theirs.
Like the timeline was splitting?
No. It wasn't. Well, every change they made kind of led to an alternate universe, right? Which the Ancient One so kindly stops the movie to describe. But no, it was, no matter what they did, they could have, like right there, Captain America beating himself up. Yeah. They flat out tell you that's not in Back to the Future. That would have had major repercussions, right? Yeah. But they flat out say multiple times that you can't actually adjust the past in that sense. They live in their timeline, and their timeline is what it is, right? So them going back and doing stuff like that wouldn't affect their timeline at all.
Right, yeah.
Okay. I mean, sure. Yeah. Again, it's time travel.
Discussions heist.
So
there's never a perfect time travel explanation.
No, there's not.
There never will be.
So why I asked that question and get your thoughts on it is, to me, one of the like larger criticisms I had of the film, that was less about a specific plot hole, is that if that is the case, to me, it lowers the character, or it lessens the threat of Thanos in this film, because essentially he's no longer the same character, right?
Oh yeah, no, he wasn't, and I agree with you wholeheartedly that the Thanos that they fight at the end was like.
He felt like he
wasn't the same one.
A lesser version of Infinity War Thanos. Like,
exactly.
He just didn't feel as threatening, and it again, it's still a minor criticism. But Vince,
tell us why you disagree. I want to know why you disagree with that, because I don't know where I stand.
I disagreed because I feel like this Thanos felt like a lot more threatening. Because this Thanos was the Thanos that we pretty much saw in Guardians of the Galaxy, and that Thanos, when he's just sitting in his floaty chair,
he kills that minion just for funsies.
He's talking down to that, like, whatever his name is.
Ronan.
The guy. He's like, Ronan. He's like, your politics bore me and all this. He's just like, I don't know. He just seemed a lot more threatening. And the Thanos in Infinity War was like calm, cool, and collected. Like, I don't know. It seemed like he had a mission. He knew what he was going to do.
Yeah, well.
And he went and he did it.
Also,
this Thanos, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, to add to your point, Thanos in Infinity War, he was more collected because he had more of a plan and it was succeeding. Whereas pre-Infinity War Thanos, Guardians of the Galaxy era Thanos is like a little less, not experienced, but he hasn't really built his plan up yet, and it's a little more volatile.
I mean, I don't know if threatening is necessarily what Sean meant to say. Is it, Sean?
Yeah.
I mean, because
it's part of it, but not entirely.
Kind of what I'm getting at is like the emotional impact, right? Because one thing that when people came out of Infinity War, a lot of people were like, oh, I kind of see where Thanos was coming from, right? Like they had connected to Thanos to a degree. And so there was a little bit of an emotional connection to that Thanos. But
well, I think, I mean, it was less of that I see where he's coming from and I think he's justified. It was more that I see he's the main character of Infinity War and it was his story. And in this film, it just felt like he was more of a generic bad guy. If that makes sense.
Okay, I see that. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but I could see why you would see it that way. And because it's basically two different characters at that point. Which they pulled with another character.
But for me,
go ahead. Yeah.
He felt more intimidating just because he came to like a much more violent kind of resolution than Infinity War Thanos, where he was just like, okay, I realize that this plan isn't going to work based off of how half the universe has reacted, so I need to just destroy everybody and make my own universe. And it just felt like this Thanos was like, I don't know, like he was more desperate in the way that he was doing things, and it was like,
when his plans started failing at the end of the battle, he just seemed sad, and I almost felt bad for a second. I went, "Oh man, buddy, come on, buck up. It's not too bad."
Oh, but you won in the other version. I want to come on.
So while we're talking about threatening Thanos, right? Big old threatening Thanos. Did anybody else find it weird how, even though he was significantly less powerful than he was in Infinity War, he was putting up more of a fight than he did against people that should have been able to beat him a lot easier.
Well, I can tell you why. Because I don't think that because he wasn't trying to fight people in Infinity War. He was just trying to get the stones.
Yeah.
He was like pretty much I don't want to say anti-violence, but he wasn't going out of his way to murder people because he certainly had his chances to kill everybody in Infinity War once he got even 2 stones. He could have just killed everybody. This Thanos realized he had no stones. He had to just beat the crap or the poop, sorry, potty language, out. He had to beat the feces out of everybody.
Those are all potty words.
I know. I'm sorry.
They all go in the
But
potty.
he realized that he had to do this just because he had no stones, so that he was vulnerable. You could kind of feel his vulnerability, and that's what made him more like he didn't feel like he was pulling his punches. It really felt like when he was beating Cap's shield and shattering it with his like sword.
Yeah.
You're just like, Jesus.
Which was also like, oh, cool. I guess we can break vibranium now. That's nice. Okay.
Well, I guess he kind of says it ultimately, where he's basically like in the Infinity War. You know, he's like, this. I don't want to. Like, I don't get pleasure out of this. I'm not trying to like cause pain. I'm trying to lessen pain in the universe. But in this one, he even says, he's like, it's never been personal until now. Now I'm going to enjoy killing you guys. Like,
exactly.
And I think that's the difference in character, right? And I think maybe that kind of encapsulates it best for me.
It's also just such a cool way to do it. Like, killing him in the very beginning, and then it's like, oh my god.
Yeah, that was crazy.
What the heck?
Yeah.
And then it's like, how are they going to bring him back? How could you possibly think to bring him back? And then they just bring back a Thanos from an earlier part of the MCU, and it's like, oh my god, that's brilliant. Like, I don't know. I feel like it could have gone horribly wrong.
Oh yeah.
And I really felt like it worked as well as it possibly could have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, you mean just bring the entire in terms of how the plot develops and that Thanos is still brought like the enemy and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, like, those were pretty much my only like real criticisms aside from those minor plot holes, but just like I said, my thoughts on Thanos in general. But while we're here, I mean, does anyone else have any other issues?
I have a few,
because I have a lot of other good stuff I want to talk about.
I have a few,
so let me get some of the negatives out.
Let me get my negatives. Let me get my negatives out. I have things I like too. Chewy. Jeez.
Where's my Nintendo Switch? I'm gonna check out for a little while.
All right.
No, go ahead. I'm listening intently.
Okay, so I mean, before we move entirely off that fight, also another part I found I didn't like because it changed the rules that have existed forever in that universe was Thanos and Thor, where Thanos was able to basically hold up Mjolnir, right? Which,
oh my god,
he shouldn't have been able to do, right?
I'm sorry, my sister brought up all these points the other day, and I'm just like, I don't care about any of these hammer points.
When the Stormbreaker or Mjolnir?
Mjolnir, or both of them.
I don't remember
both
that.
of them.
He holds Stormbreaker. He doesn't.
He only holds it after Thor calls it to him, and he grabs onto it and presses it down. I don't think he's actually holding.
Look, okay, I want to just like throw this in here. Like, there are lots of hammer ambiguities in the series. Like, okay, Kate Blanchett catches the hammer in Thor 3. She held it. Was she worthy? Probably not. But I think probably in the first Thor, they're specific about the phrase wielding the hammer. Like, you have to be worthy to wield the hammer, which also includes picking it up. But I think all that other stuff is such minor technicalities, like, I just don't care.
It is minor, but I do care a little bit.
That's weird of you to care. There are things that are more important to care about.
It's more like stopping the hammer isn't the same as wielding it. Like, Cap was able to use, with the help of his shield, he was able to block the hammer in Thor 1.
I mean, once again, nitpicky, but you remember in the first movie, he just puts it down on top of Loki, right? And Loki can't move because it's just on top of him, right? Like, that's essentially how it's supposed to work. But that's whatever. Okay.
And that's the thing, is that you come off of a background of comic knowledge, and sometimes some of the points you bring up with those nitpicks, it's like, did the movies ever establish that definitively? I think a lot of times if you go back, you'll find that the answer is no. So if they're vague about the rules, they can be vague about the rules.
I want to point out that these are my nitpicks. They don't need to be your nitpicks, and these only affected what I viewed. So
look, I just don't like how your face looks, or anything about you, Chris.
How about this for a nitpick? I heard about this as a complaint on the internet. I don't know if I necessarily agree with it, but I'd kind of like to... It's a pretty fair nitpick.
Sure.
So Thanos had to
make his glove from a dying star, but Tony Stark was able to use Earth technology and just create a device that could hold all the Infinity Stones.
Oh, yeah,
Well, maybe space creatures shouldn't, like, maybe they don't always need to use space magic. Maybe there's more efficient ways to do things. I don't know.
Maybe. I'm just saying it made like that whole visiting the planet so that Thor could get a super weapon kind of pointless if Tony could just make a weapon that could hold all the Infinity Stones.
Yeah, I thought about that too.
In his like summer getaway home.
Well,
I was also thinking like, well, maybe that's why Hulk and Tony affected when they used it is because the glove wasn't as strong as.
I don't know if I agree with that. Thanos,
Thanos got messed up with.
Yeah,
the
but he used it
gauntlet.
twice.
Yeah, he looked pretty beat up at the end of the first.
Yeah,
movie.
he did.
Yeah.
His arm was fried.
No, but it was after he had used it twice.
No, at the end of the first movie, you could see he's in recovery.
Yeah, I don't know. Also, the glove is all fried at the end of the first movie. It's all crispy.
Yeah.
It's all crispy.
Also, did you guys notice that it was Thanos' left side that gets fried, and it was what? That's weird. He has it on his left. That's why is because the cosmic glove that Thanos built had to be on his left hand, and you need a star to make a left-hand glove. But if you want it on your right hand, you could make it fine. Because the one that Tony Stark made.
Oh, that makes so much sense. Glove. Thanks for explaining that.
There you go. Boom.
Okay.
Explained.
Did anybody else? And this is probably just me because I'm sick in the head. Did anybody else kind of, whether it be internally or out loud, laugh when Natasha, Black Widow, and Hawkeye were fighting to die? Oh, no. I was laughing. I was laughing because not so much.
No, God,
not so much
no,
the
no.
act. Not so much the act, right? Because obviously it comes from a noble place. It's fine. It was the way it played out where they just kept one-upping each other. Like, no, I'm going to die. No, I'm going to die.
I mean,
no,
I did,
no,
yeah,
I
kind of laughed when he shot the arrow and exploded, but it wasn't a laugh in, like, I thought it was silly. I thought it was like, oh, man, they're really fighting for this.
It's serious.
It also kind of defeats the purpose of the Soul Stone the way that they were doing it, too, to me. But,
I don't know. I don't think so. Also, I remember you having a criticism about that scene in Infinity Wars about whether the logistics of Thanos loving Gamora, and I don't know. I don't know. Why do you hate this scene on this planet so much?
Here, wait. Can I say one thing I didn't like about it? Because I watched Infinity War the night before, and I get that like they're going to the same planet, but like, did the shots of Gamora and Black Widow falling have to be the exact same with the exact music? And it was like it was the exact like.
That's how you fall on that planet.
I don't know.
I get it, but the musical cues are exactly the same, and it's like, okay, is this how things happen on this planet just all the time? Just
I know. Well, Red Skull's his life sucks now.
Sound music.
I guess
Red Skull's in the back playing a violin. That's actually how the music's.
I thought it was interesting that so many of the things were identical because the context and the characters and their relationships are all different, but the process is the same. So you're watching visually a scene very similar play out to one you've already seen, but everything around it is different. I thought that made it interesting for me.
Yeah, it's like poetry.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, so I have two more notes. However, and these two are actual notes from like they're actually bigger problems I had. One of which I will not go over in this show because I know Chewie will get mad at me if I bring it up.
Well, now I have to hear it.
No,
I have to hear it.
You will find out afterwards.
The audience now. You're gonna leave the audience like
Chris. Just tell me what it is. I'll be kind. I promise. I promise I'll stay.
Fine. Go to your next one, Chris.
Okay,
we'll come back to that.
Okay, we're not coming back to that one until later. The biggest thing that I disliked at the end was when Iron Man killed every single one of those enemies. It was genocide, right? That's all it was. He, to me, was not much better than Thanos in what he did. Like,
he did the same thing in the first Avengers movie. I don't know.
I don't know, but to me, that's what I'm saying. So when I saw that, I was like, I don't necessarily like Iron Man's character anymore, right? Because he is not the hero that I want to see. And so I mean, because I'm me and I like DC, I'm apparently the only person that likes DC.
Yeah, you're the only one, Chris. You're the only one.
I started thinking about when Superman in Man of Steel snaps Zod's neck, right? It was a huge deal. People just were upset. They were like, Superman doesn't do that. right? And then when Batman in BVS was going around and people, he was taking people out that were in his way, people were like, no, that's not Batman. And so I was like, what's the disparity between like these characters, like the DC Holy Trinity, and just like more general Marvel characters? Because I mean, it's not just this movie, right? Like you said, it's always happened where like Marvel heroes kill. Captain America actually, I think, is an odd one that doesn't, right? And that makes sense. He stands for something more. At least I can't think of any time he killed.
I think there's more to answer your question, unless you have more points. Sorry.
Well, I mean, I think I'm just elaborating a little bit more in case I needed to, but it just had me thinking. It's not. I mean, it affects the way that I view the movie because I don't agree with the choice he made, but I don't think it makes the movie any better or worse because he did it.
I think.
Do you think the human race could have negotiated with the giant flying snake monster?
No. I want to go back to Chris's point. So I think probably an explanation for why that is because I think that characters like Batman and Superman come with more emotional baggage because they've been around longer. They're more familiar. There have been more iterations. People have these ideas of what those characters are and what they're about. I don't think anybody cared about Iron Man before 2008. And I think, I mean, these characters, Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, they've never been anything on like Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. So I think, and also with Batman, we were just off the heels of a really awesome iteration of Batman. I think people are more critical of those characters because they're more familiar and they are, before the MCU, have always been more beloved. Now that the MCU exists, everybody loves Iron Man and etc. But the MCU had a unique opportunity to kind of make these characters who they wanted because they weren't super well known before it started. So I don't know. I think that's where that comes from for me.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I agree with you. That I think is correct. But I think also, Chris, you basically it's the films themselves. It's the world and the characters that the films themselves established that set up why. Like you said that people were upset when Superman cracked his neck at the end of the film. Yeah. That's the point. Superman was upset that he had to crack his neck at the end of the film because that's the character.
I mean, you're defending the movie, right? Which I'm all for. Defend that movie. I agree. But my point is that people were upset, right?
Well, what do you mean they were upset?
Because people were like, "That's not Superman. That's not what he does." And so,
yeah, that's who cares.
I think Chewie kind of got what I was getting at. My point is why. So, from the viewer's point of view, why are they so much more willing to accept Marvel heroes as heroes that can kill anything that gets in their way versus DC heroes, or at least Superman, Batman, where they're held to this level where killing is unacceptable by any degree?
No, but it's not. It's the worlds that the films themselves have established. And I will say for Batman versus Superman, again, I think that's not fair. Well, whatever. It's not that it's not fair. It's if an audience is upset that Batman killed people in the Snyder films, that's it's unfortunate because it came right on the heels of the Nolan Batman, which that was a pivotal point of Batman's character in those films. And so you have that association, and even though it's a different universe, people still they can't separate that. It's unfair. It's unfortunate because in the Snyder films, Batman was never established as someone who didn't kill, but people's association was still there.
Right.
So I think it's the films themselves that have had. Never have any of the Marvel movies. Never has Iron Man had a moral quandary about killing bad guys. That's why it doesn't matter that he kills. I mean, on a character level. Sure, if you want to have some moral, ethical question about, that's fine. But I'm just saying from a character level, people aren't going to have problems with it because he's never had a problem with it. The world has never had a problem with it in the films themselves. But in Batman and Superman films, they do because it's a part of those films. It's a part of those characters.
I also think that you're attaching a little too much significance about the fact that he snapped them, because if he did, they were trying to kill all those armies anyway. And Thanos snapped half of the universe. I don't know how many bad guy troops showed up to that fight, but it wasn't half the universe. It was all the bad guys who were going to show up to try to kill them anyway.
I didn't say it was equal in cost. I'm saying it was genocide because he wiped out an entire race of aliens, right? So,
well, that's Thanos' fault for just bringing one race. I don't know.
Well, my point
Do we know?
I mean, I was just told the aliens on that one ship. But
my point is with all the power in the gauntlet, he could have done anything. He could have shrunk them into like minuscule little dudes. He could have put them.
They were all fighting.
He could have put them on a planet that was impossible for the. I mean, he literally could have done whatever because he had the Reality Stone and all the power in the universe. And
I don't disagree with you, Chris. I honestly don't disagree with you. I had that same thought, but I also think that it works for the film because, again, there's a certain, I don't know, visual, imagery that associated with that kind of
also
vanishing.
Thanos just getting his comeuppance, him getting snapped. It's like I understand that you're saying the army itself, but it's like I don't know. Thanos is the army is Thanos. They follow him. It's like
right. Also, just imagine a sequence at the end of this giant movie, at the end of this saga, where they're bothering to demonstrate to the audience that Tony took the time to send
to be a better
these
person.
Bad guys to this unhanded.
To be
because the movie
person?
doesn't. Chris, the movie doesn't establish that as an arc. I mean, the movie establishes that we have to win at the end of the day. And if they had taken the time, it would have been such a weird detour tonally that you would have had to, earlier in the movie, rewrite it so that it is a payoff to something. And I didn't need that. I didn't need that. I thought it was fine.
That's fine. Once again, I knew going into this was my personal opinion, and it made me respect Iron Man as a character less. And that's me.
I've always kind of thought Iron Man has always been a jerk.
All right, Chris, now say the second thing because you already said it.
No.
Just mention it.
No.
Just... All right, fine.
I will go...
on an episode that you're not on, Chris, we're going to bring it up.
We can
have your side of the story.
We can discuss it after we're done recording. Anyways, let's go to the good. Let's talk good.
I know, but what he's saying is that after we discuss it after you're done recording, we're all going to do another episode and we're going to discuss it with us.
Once you find out what it is, I highly doubt you will.
Oh, no. Anyway, let's move on.
Okay, fine. Okay, well, yeah, I think, unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, I do think we spent a lot of time on the negative, which to me was, generally...
Someone's got to. Someone has
typically,
to.
Positive things go quicker because everybody will just be usually in agreement about it, right?
Well, sure. But let's get into those then. More of those.
All right.
Stuff that we haven't. So I mentioned a lot of the payoffs for things throughout the films, but I also really, really liked the emphasis on certain characters in this film. Some surprising characters. Like, I did not expect Ant-Man, Hawkeye, Nebula, and, War Machine to be, kind of some of the more prominent characters in the film. It was kind of interesting and kind of I don't know, it's kind of surprising, and it didn't detract from the core Avengers. And I don't know, I thought it was kind of cool, and it provided a good kind of, thematic firing board on what the film was trying to say in a different context.
Yeah,
could you have ever imagined having a montage where it was War Machine going? What am I trying to say?
What are you trying to say?
I'm trying to say something here.
I don't know, Finn.
Well,
okay.
If you don't,
no. So I know what I'm
you
trying
got
to
it.
say.
Okay, you got it.
I got it. I couldn't have ever pictured having a montage of War Machine and Nebula actually revisiting. It's just such a crazy concept. Revisiting Star-Lord and seeing him dancing around without the music, and it's like, oh my god, this guy really is such.
Well, the funny thing is that I actually did think that back when I saw Guardians, because I saw Guardians in theaters probably 4 or 5 times, and one of the times I was like, well, if anybody was watching him right now, he would look like such an idiot. And lo and behold, someone was. That's amazing. That's incredible. We were talking about positives now, but I actually just want to... Vince, I have a question for you. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Okay.
First preliminary question. Did you ever see Captain Marvel?
Nope.
Okay, so as someone who hasn't seen Captain Marvel and someone who was worried that this character would come out of nowhere and save the day after not being established, how do you feel that the movie handled this character that you don't know very well?
I felt like they handled her really well, actually.
Why?
I was totally fine with it because I didn't feel like she was anywhere near the main focus of the movie. I just felt like, I knew who she was just based off of what I knew, and I don't know, she was there for moments, but she wasn't there to do anything huge to this in like this story. Like it didn't feel like it was because of Captain Marvel, the heroes won the day.
I mean, kind of.
I mean, sure, she did.
If it wasn't for her, they would have all died because of his ship.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure, she had some important things, but it didn't feel like the story definitely wasn't focused on her, which was really the thing I cared about the most.
That's true.
I wanted the story to finish with the main core 6 Avengers, and I felt like it did. And seeing Captain Marvel's powers was awesome, and it was cool seeing her go like toe to toe with Thanos, and helping the heroes out and everything. But I wouldn't necessarily say that she had a bigger impact than like Doctor Strange, who literally brings all the good guys back, to this fight like in 1 second. Although I will say, I would have liked Doctor Strange to do more in the fight than just hold back the water, because I was like, okay, he's holding back the water. I kind of want to see him get in on this fight.
I feel like he should have made a little hole in the ground and then have the other portal over the ocean, like 50 miles out, and just make a little drain.
Can't he make portals? Can't
he
just make
pouring
portals
the water back into it?
Pour it into Thanos' ship, because it would be funny.
Well, I mean, not that it was the focus, but while you brought that up, how you wanted to see more Doctor Strange, I also thought it was kind of weird that we didn't see a lot of Hulk in that fight either.
Well, that's the thing. He's Professor Hulk. It's like he doesn't even seem like he wants to fight anymore. He wants to be quippy.
But I mean, he had moments of like actual rage, like when Black Widow died. That was like a moment of actual rage. I also thought it was funny.
Have you thrown a bench, Vince?
Well,
not that.
Let me interject about Professor Hulk, because I feel like Marvel has kind of not been really entirely sure how to handle Hulk for a long time, and I thought Ragnarok was a good step in like figuring out, all right, what do we want to do with the Hulk and what's his arc going to be? Because before that, he just showed up when he could, which was just the Avengers movies, and he got angry and hulked out. Age of Ultron added the love story with the Black Widow, but it always reeked of we need to give him something to do territory. And I think having a more human Hulk character in this movie was the most interesting thing they've done with him for a while, besides everything they did in Ragnarok. So I don't need him smashing anymore. We've seen plenty of that.
But what happens to that persona, that anger persona? What happens to it? Because it was its own creature, right? He was his own. Is he just forever doomed?
We don't know. They can explore that more.
I mean, to me, it was less about doomed. It was that he found peace. Like, I think it kind of speaks to a lot of what the film was, is that as bad as, half the population dying off or getting vanished, like, a lot of the characters are in good places at the beginning of the film. Obviously, Tony Stark, Hulk, right? Like
Thor is in the best place. He's the dude now.
Exactly. And I think that's an important aspect of this film. This idea that, obviously awful things happen, but sometimes you move on, and that's kind of what Steve was saying at the beginning. You got to move on, and some of them did, and they're better for it. Like, not better for the world falling apart, but they've learned to become better. They've learned to adapt and move on.
Yes.
And I think it was really interesting and cool that they did some of that off screen. They just we didn't have to have a whole movie showing Bruce Banner struggle with this stuff. It's just he found peace within himself. He found a way to make Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde be the same person and live together. And that's awesome. There's a completely new Hulk that we have never seen before.
Right, and then and that's one of the things that for me, this movie didn't feel super long. And even though the first act was like an hour, it didn't feel like an hour to me, because it was all these little new surprising character things. Like, oh, cool, that was an interesting choice. Lots of interesting choices. So it felt exciting, even though there wasn't a lot of action in that first hour. It felt exciting, little things like Professor Hulk and where the characters are doing. And, that was cool to me. I liked it a lot.
I agree. And, it was... really funny parts, as all the Marvel movies have there. But I think all those moments, I think one of the things that I think separates the MCU from not just DC, but other kind of big budget action or superhero films, is they're able to find those small character moments that don't feel forced or cheesy. At least not in a bad way. Like the stuff with Iron Man and his daughter. All of that stuff I thought was fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
To me, it was so good. And there was a lot of screen time, but that little girl they got, I thought she was great. She was a really good, just like presence or whatever. But like it was still Iron Man. You got to know him. You get to see Iron Man you get to see Tony in a completely different light, and he's good at being a father, and he likes that life. And like, imagine that from where Iron Man 1 came from, where, you know what I mean? Like, and all that was conveyed just through small little, like, you know, chamber piece dialogue scenes.
Right.
And those are the things that I think that elevate, at least for me, these characters.
Yeah, What do you think about the chances of Robert Downey Jr. getting a Best Actor nod? I think it's 0%.
I'm not gonna talk any Oscar odds for this. I don't think it's wise. No, I mean, I know what you're saying, and because there's a part of me that wants to be like, oh yeah, Lord of the Rings, they gave it to the last one because it was the end of this thing and it's important and there's this perceived importance, but I don't think. I mean, I'm trying to be realistic here. I don't think we're going to see any kind of significant Oscar representation for this. I would love to be wrong, but I very much doubt it.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. I mean, just as a note real fast, I kind of agree with Chewie. I think, if anything, it would be up for something more writing-esque, but I definitely think like Infinity War was a much better like story and everything than this, right? Like, it had a more cohesive... because of Thanos, like open ending, right? Like a start.
Yeah,
and a finish.
I don't know. I need to see this new one again, but I think just gut instinct. I think Infinity War is maybe a slightly better movie, and it's really hard to judge because we're all fresh off the excitement of seeing the ending of the MCU. So, like, yeah, it's hard to tell, but yeah. What's up?
You saw Spider-Man?
I know you keep pointing out that Spider-Man is the end of Phase 3, but I don't care, Chris.
Because it's because I feel betrayed, Chewie. I feel betrayed.
No, that I'm not counting it. Nobody's gonna.
No, that they announced that it was.
It's all entirely arbitrary, and I feel betrayed by corporate Disney's like oversight of not ending every phase on an Avengers movie. It's the most obvious thing to do. Why would you throw one or two extra? Why is Ant-Man at the end of Phase 2? That doesn't make any. There's, you know what I mean. So
it doesn't.
And
I mean, this is the end. This is the
anyways,
right? Chris, you can keep pretending it doesn't.
I'm just making
bad
jokes, Chewie.
Not funny. Make me mad.
What was it?
A note on while we were talking about good character moments and stuff. I do think, even though it's more on the comedic scale, that there was a lot to be had with Thor's character, right? Like his whole thing, which they kind of spoon feed the audience, right? Which is like, be the person you want to be, not who you're necessarily meant to be, right? Like, or who people want you to be. And so we got Fat Thor, and now everybody's blaming them for misrepresenting fat people.
I think with Thor, he spent a lot of time in Infinity War being sad and working through emotions and having an actual legitimate, really heavy emotional character arc. And I like that now that everybody's sad, we decided, well, he's going to be the funny version of sad. He's gonna be the washed up, drinks all day, beer belly, sad, like. Cool, that's good, because I don't need more of the same sad Thor that I got for an entire other 3-hour movie before this. Like, we can sacrifice a little bit of his seriousness to his arc, and I liked all the Big Lebowski references, and I don't know. He added a different flavor rather than everybody being the same type of sad.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and I agree. And one thing I couldn't help but appreciate while watching this movie in particular is just how much of an impact Taika had on Thor's character. Like he saved Thor, right? Like Thor in Thor 2 was just
I disagree, but okay.
Right? It was like he's okay. But Taika created him, and he basically just injected him with a lot of Star-Lord, right? Kind of goofy, knuckle-headed type stuff, but I think overall, like, I think he saved Thor. I don't think
Thor was in trouble. I don't think it needed saving. I don't think financially or critically there was anything wrong with either Thor. But I will say, I think what he did do is rejuvenate that IP and give it a new direction to go in. I think any other director it would have been more of the same from Thor's 1 and 2, and then we really would have been like, okay, enough Thor. I think there was a little bit of a shift in direction. But I don't know. I don't think it was in trouble. So, I don't know.
Well, I not in the sense that they wouldn't make a Thor 3 or anything, but I think just in general, keeping audiences interested in his character.
Sure, yeah.
Well, yeah, it's rare that like, because yeah, you're right, Chewie. I didn't like absolutely hate Thor 1 or 2, but I just felt like his character, like, he felt much more like, I don't know, like.
I'll say this.
Chris Hemsworth injected like a sense of humor that I really didn't get out of him in the first 2 movies, and it made me like. It just, especially with how serious like the MCU is getting, it kind of made me really get attached more to his character and actually really care about his arc. Because I mean, and they've said it before, Ragnarok, Infinity War, and Endgame was like a 3-act story for Thor.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it certainly played out that way. I would say Thor 1 and 2, they were kind of one-off stories for Thor that didn't really have as much of the continuity as Ragnarok, Infinity War, and Endgame did.
Sure, yeah, that's fine.
I mean, to me, I guess I'll say this. To me, Thor 1 and 2, my favorite parts were Loki. Thor Ragnarok, my favorite part was Thor.
And Jeff Goldblum.
If that says anything. Like, does that make sense? Just maybe.
I guess, yeah, that makes sense.
So that being said, I really like where they ended up, and I've been kind of vocal about how I'm using this as an out of the MCU for the time being because I'm just exhausted. But I think with the way they set up Guardians of the Galaxy, I would probably watch Guardians of the Galaxy 3 as long as Thor is a part of that crew.
Would you not watch it?
You're going to watch it anyway. What are you talking about?
Well, it sounds like there is also going to be a Thor 4. Just from what I've heard, like it actually is like in.
I haven't heard anything
about that either. I've read a bunch of What's Up Next articles. I haven't heard a peep about that. But I mean, what would Thor? Well, let's save that for later. But
the title itself, Thor 4, it works.
Thor 4. What? What other talking points you got?
Well, and a couple other. I just wanted to kind of go off any other small little things. Like I said, payoffs, or if not payoffs, then just like kind of callbacks to stuff that I was not expecting.
We haven't talked about the biggest one. Okay. Biggest payoff.
Well, okay. Are you talking about Cap?
Yeah.
We'll come back.
Let's
talk about ending things later. Let's get to that in a little bit. But Vince,
can I talk about another?
I mean, I wasn't talking about his ending. I was talking about him and Mjolnir.
Oh yeah.
Oh well, yeah, that for sure. That was maybe like the most like cheer-inducing moment of the film. Like that was my moment of Infinity War when Thor comes in and like slams Stormbreaker down out of like when they're fighting. Like where you just want like when he picks up Mjolnir, it's like it was, and then he starts fighting with it and he's like throwing it and bouncing and he's losing lightning and it's bouncing off a shield. Like, oh god, that.
I mean, he was using it better than Thor ever did.
I think,
like when he like slams the thunder down or the lightning down on him, right? Like that's something way beyond anything.
Thor's just a jock. I don't know,
Yeah.
Captain America's a captain. I think if we're talking about positives and just little things I like, I think this is probably my favorite movie with Captain America in it. I think he was a standout, which is great because he didn't have a lot to do in the last movie. But I think just every scene with him, especially the Back to the Future 2 stuff, because he goes in the elevator and it's a clear callback to Winter Soldier. And I'm like, what's he going to do? Is he going to beat them all up again? Are we going to get the does anyone want to get out line? And then it's like, but then you're like, oh, we know they're all Hydra. And then he says, Hail Hydra. And you're like, oh man, that's the perfect. What a cool way to
all of those little things. Yeah. So and then when he fights himself too, it's so perfect.
When he says I can do this all day, and he says, okay, I know. And all the little Captain America bits were so like I don't know. I never enjoyed him so much as I did in this movie. That was all fun. Paul Rudd got to Paul Rudd around quite a bit.
I thought it got to be more Paul Rudd in this than any of the Ant-Mans, which I love.
I thought one of my favorite moments in the whole movie was a Paul Rudd moment, and it was when he was like grossly shoving lettuce into the taco, and then the shit blew all the taco fillings. You go to Taco Bell and you open it, and the fillings are never in your taco. So it was just too real. It was too real for a Marvel movie. It was the realest thing in the movie.
but then the Hulk shares his tacos.
It's interrupted by a spaceship. The realest, most mundane possible thing in the movie is interrupted by a spaceship showing up.
with a cyborg and a talking
and
raccoon.
then the Hulk replaces his taco because he's a friendly scientist Hulk. What a ridiculous thing I just said.
Also, Paul Rudd can sure take a missile because he got hit directly with that missile and he turned out just fine.
I guess he shrunk, I guess. But when I saw that, I'm like, oh, did they just kill off Ant-Man?
Yeah.
But no.
Oh, but I want to also say, in terms of like just completing really good story arcs, just when Spider-Man comes back and like Tony Stark just gives him a hug and it's just like, oh my god.
That was another, like, I think that's another callback from when he's in the limo like Spider-Man goes in for the hug. Like there's so many of those things that I know I'm missing. That like if I had just watched a movie before this, one of the other movies, there's probably direct line callbacks. I know there's some, but I'm sure I'm missing some.
Spider-Man says he tells the suit to go into kill mode, which he accidentally puts it in Spider-Man: Homecoming, and then he turns it off.
Oh really? Yeah.
And because the eyes turn red, and he's like, no, don't go into kill mode. And then in this he does, and it just stabs everybody. That was fantastic.
A little out of character, but
I don't know if he knew that was going to happen.
He said kill mode.
He's got 20,000 monsters trying to. What do you mean?
I mean,
what would you do, Chris? Are you gonna stick to your no killing morals when 50 bad guys are trying to rip your head off? Okay, Chris.
Yes.
I can't wait.
You know something will happen when you say kill mode that will probably help you. You're not gonna
no, because you got to stick to your morals. You're gonna die. You're gonna die so that those 50 bad demons can live. All right.
Yeah. But one thing I do have a note. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but I found I wish there had been payoff for that I didn't really see was between Rocket and Groot, right? Because at the end of Infinity War, right, there's that moment where Groot basically calls him Dad, right?
Yeah. I actually just in general wanted a little bit more Groot. But we got plenty in the last, and that's a balancing act too. Is it's like they have to go. Okay, we have an obscene amount of characters now. How much got a lot of screen time in the last one, and who didn't get any, and who needed more, and that's just the casualty of the movie, right? We got enough Groot.
Like I thought we were gonna get Vision back in some way.
Oh yeah,
that
it's funny. He's the only character that didn't come back, right?
And yet he's going to be a part of the Scarlet Witch show.
Well, there's a lot of talk about the logistics of how that show is going to work, and I don't want to go too far off topic, but Shuri was working on his brain, so there's some talk about how like the 1950s as a time period is involved, and a lot of people are saying that TV show is going to be a lot of like simulations and like Wanda going through memories in the computer and weird stuff like that. And it's too early to tell what they're gonna do with Vision, but yeah, I was surprised, but the thing is, I didn't realize it until a full day later. I was like, hey, wait a second, Vision was barely even mentioned.
They didn't mention him. It was Wanda just vaguely said we both lost someone.
Right.
Like that's pretty much
right.
But man, what a payoff for her.
Oh yeah, that was fun. Fun. She had her accent back in this movie. It's been a while.
That's good.
Yeah, I don't quite understand that.
5 years of napping will bring back your accent. Also, like you were mentioning the captain stuff, and obviously the callback to the dancing and stuff, and just his character in general. I just really love how it was basically him and Iron Man, and how both of their paths diverged, and how they were kind of the opposite ends of the spectrum, where Cap was trying to find a life form, like that's what his whole point was. Like, you got to find something for yourself, something worth living for. And Iron Man had found that, and just basically that conversation with his dad, where he says, "I hope he's better than me," and he does. He becomes better than him. He's able to put the greater good in front of his own self-interest, and like things like that, where like, yeah, that's just good storytelling. But I don't know, the way it's been built up over 10 years, right? And how he's still Tony Stark, but he's a far cry from the same Tony Stark in 2008.
Yeah. That's
so like all that stuff. And I don't know, I couldn't help but like, little nostalgia, like I am Iron Man, the thing that began it all, right? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, that was great. That was the best callback, because that was the thing that, when Iron Man came out in 2008, and that was the ending of the movie. Like all of our brains were trained in superheroes have to have secret identity mode, and that was such a. It seems quaint now, but that was such a mind blowing thing. Like, what? And then the roll credits, and boy,
and it set the tone for the decade that came after.
Exactly.
It's just crazy. What other? I can't think of any other small things off the top of my head in terms of callbacks, but they were littered.
Oh yeah,
the film.
we could do an entire podcast just on callbacks if I could remember them. But
yeah, but one other thing that I thought, so as much as the film was just a celebration of 21 films, callbacks and character moments and all this stuff that has been built up, I think in some way, not in some ways, in every way, like it's as much a callback to all the filmmakers that have built up this universe, right? Obviously the Russo brothers, obviously, but I mean, back to like callbacks to Whedon and Brana and Gunn and Favreau and Waititi. Like this is it's as much about those filmmakers and the culmination that these people from on the other side of the camera have built up. And I don't know, it's easy to kind of forget that when you're in the moment and immersed in this world. But just it's crazy how much has been built up. As much as the Avengers is this motley crew of like raccoons and Pegasuses and spider people, and like the filmmakers are just as crazy as a team as the Avengers.
Right?
Are.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's quite an accomplishment. It's not, like I said, I never thought it would work.
Gilderoy Lockhart.
Yeah, that he said that.
Oh.
Yeah, Brana, Kenneth Branagh.
Oh, I thought you said Eric Bana.
No, he didn't do. He didn't. We're not counting his contributions.
I think we need to. You won't like it when he's hungry.
When he's hungry, that's what he says. He says, "You won't like me when I'm hungry." In that movie, have you seen it? Do you remember it? I remember it. Pepperidge Farm remembers.
Your brain.
Have you guys watched that movie though recently? The amount of like split screens and like nonsensical ridiculousness in that movie.
Are you talking about?
I have not watched it.
Are you talking about the one with? Oh yeah, that's the Eric Bana one, the Ang Lee one, right?
Yeah. Where it's like there's like weird split screens and then like the screens just dissolve. It's like they had like iMovie and just went with it and just like threw all these dissolves.
Ang Lee is actually a good director and has made a lot of good movies, and I think probably he overthought that movie. That's my always been my take. Like, oh, I'm making a superhero movie. It's a comic book. I think he just overthought it, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
If you don't have any more talking points, we could transition into something else if you want, or.
Well, I was going to ask, maybe this is what you're going to get to, but what do you guys think of the future? Like, I don't want to get too much in this because I do think this is the end, period, with maybe another sentence after it, but it is the end, period. But there are a few things that I think might be worth mentioning, and that is, if nothing else, some of the character deaths. Besides everyone who vanished, obviously, there were actually, so people who are dead. Loki is dead, even though he's back. The version of Loki of Infinity War died.
True.
Gamora died.
True.
The version of Infinity War. So actually, in Guardians 3, it's going to be a Gamora that has not interacted with any of them. That's kind of interesting.
I think that's extremely interesting. That's the thing I'm most looking forward to at this point. But anyway.
Vision is dead. Black Widow is dead, which was kind of surprising because there's always that talk and speculation of a Black Widow movie.
Black Widow movie is happening. It starts filming in a month.
So this is my thought is that if Cap's going back and returning all the stones, maybe when he returns the Soul Stone, she'll come back to life.
No, you can't. You can't adjust the timeline like that, Sean.
No, Sean.
But it doesn't adjust the timeline.
I think
she'll just be back.
I think it's going to be a prequel. Because I don't think that it's a coincidence that they brought up Budapest again in this movie. And the entire internet, like if you look at fandom circles, are always like, I want to know what happened in Budapest. And this is the first movie in a while that they brought it up. I think they deliberately wanted to remind us of what happened there because I think it's going to be a prequel.
That's good thought. Again, Budapest.
It's already been confirmed to be a prequel.
Oh, has it? I don't know that.
And of course, Iron Man dead. But I mean, there are dead people. They didn't all come back to life magically happy. Right?
Yeah. Well, which was nice.
I think
because that was a big thing about the Marvel universe is that characters seem to just always find a way. Oh, wait, I would be remiss if I didn't mention this. I was really surprised they didn't include Agent Coulson at all in this movie.
She was in the last scene.
Coulson,
Agent Coulson. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, you're right. Agent Coulson.
Yeah.
Like nothing at all. Like I don't know. I just felt like something.
From what I've heard, there's a lot of drama at Disney between the people who run the TV Marvel and the people it's Kevin Feige runs the movie studio and Ike Perlmutter runs the TV universe. And from what I've heard, there's a ton of drama behind the scenes there, and it's always been very there's a reason there's not a ton of crossover between the two universes, and which is why I was surprised to see original Jarvis show up with Peggy Carter at the end, because I think that's one of the few, if not maybe the only, where they took a TV specific character and put it in the movies. What a random character, you know.
Well, I mean, they did use a lot of Coulson in Captain Marvel.
That's also true. Yeah, he was in that like the whole movie. So, you know, we just saw him. That's fine. It is weird that if he's alive, nobody would tell the Avengers, who were super upset about it. Especially now that the world is crazy and like I can't imagine what the justification for keeping his death a secret is still now that the world is not nuts. You know, whatever. I don't know.
Well, aside from character deaths, what do you guys think? So, Phase 5, I don't know, whatever. It is next, I mean. Like, so, the speculation, I don't know, is mutants, which I think makes a lot of sense.
I don't want to do mutants.
There's potential there.
I don't want that at all.
You don't want... Well, but do you think it... I'm not... Even if you don't want it, do you think it's where they're going?
No.
What do you think?
I think, well, like I said, a lot of TV projects are in the works, like a whole lot of TV projects for Disney Plus, and a lot of them involve old characters. I think at least half of those are going to be prequels, and or they're going to take place in the time gap. Remember we talked on Captain Marvel? There's like a giant time gap that things. I think they're going to probably take advantage of some of that. One of the TV shows is the Loki show, and it was vague about whether Loki. I mean, it looks like he's still alive, possibly. In
a version of Loki is alive with the Tesseract,
and so that could be the jumping off point to the Loki show, or the Loki show could be another prequel. We don't know. I find that interesting. I don't know. What would you guys prefer? Would you guys prefer the Loki show be a prequel or that he survived? Because you were saying, Vince, you were saying that these deaths seem permanent. I don't think there's a single death that can't be undone still. I think in some random, wacky, roundabout way. I mean, I think Vision's brain is still in the computer in Wakanda. Tony's...
Yeah, I mean, he's a robot, so I don't really count him as a person.
I think Iron Man's the one they can't undo.
Iron Man has come back in the comics as
Robert Downey.
I'm just saying, I think I don't think they will.
I don't think they will, but I think they could, because Iron Man has come back as a hologram. Captain America has come back after being old as being injected by magic serum to turn him young again. So,
but I guess what I'm saying is they might bring Iron Man back, but they won't bring Robert Downey Jr. It won't be Tony Stark.
Sure.
Iron Man.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean,
I wonder, like, who are they going to have taking the reins? Is it Pepper Potts?
Well,
I think they're going to phase out all of that. I think it might be, Falcon and War Machine. Like, I just don't know if people are so attached to those characters, and that's why I think, to me, the mutants make a lot more sense, because people are more attached to, like, the X-Men characters. They're more recognizable. Like, people are attached to Don Cheadle because he's been in these films, but no one really cares about War Machine. But people will go to they're not going to go to the movies for War Machine. No one really cares, right? But they'll go to the movies for Wolverine. They'll go to the movies for, Cyclops.
How would you feel if they brought Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool into this?
They've already said that they're not going to mess with Deadpool because Disney knows how much of a moneymaker that is, and they don't want to alter the formula too much. So Deadpool's looking like, from what I've read, is still going to happen in much the same way that we know it as. But I don't want him. I wouldn't mind if Deadpool had his movie and things from the MCU showed up in his movie, but I don't think I want him in the main series showing up acting like a clown. I don't know. That's my personal preference. And it's similar with X-Men. Like, I think eventually they'll do X-Men somehow, and I'm glad that X-Men will be getting a reboot, because this Fox X-Men universe has gotten stale a long time ago. But it doesn't really make sense story-wise, because X-Men has always assumed that mutants have been around since, like, humans have been around.
Yeah.
And I just don't know how... I was kind of hoping for a little bit more timeline tomfoolery in this movie to explain how you would incorporate X-Men, because you can incorporate everything from the Fantastic Four universe really easily. In fact, some of the stuff has already been... Like, the big giant skull from Guardians of the Galaxy is whatever creature that Galactus is.
Yeah.
So... And then the Fantastic Four get their powers from an accident, so they can show up whenever the heck they want.
Yeah.
I think probably if I had to guess, I think probably they'll focus on some more cosmic stuff for one, because they've already been moving in that direction. But I think they'll probably focus on more of the Fantastic Four side of the Marvel Universe for a while they figure out what to do with X-Men, because X-Men's a tricky situation.
I mean,
I think maybe if they do it slow instead of X-Men and they have all the characters, they gradually introduce some like one at a time or something.
Well, they could very easily just do away with the notion that they've been around for all time and just have them be a result of something that's just now starting to mutate.
Yeah, I thought about that. Like maybe after the snap, like maybe even that, like the snap and them coming back has some weird effect on people. I don't know. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that would be maybe an interesting way to kind of have ramifications moving forward with people.
Yeah, that's true. But the point is they have to figure it out. They can't do X-Men 1-to-1. And as an X-Men fan, there's a lot of things inherently about how that story works that they would have to change that are the reasons why I like that series. You know what I mean?
I feel like the Spider-Man movie is actually probably going to not necessarily go directly into it, but potentially set it up. Because if you think about what the villains are supposed to be, right? Like those elemental guys or whatever.
Sure.
And then you also have Mysterio. Isn't Mysterio a mutant?
No. Mysterio is, from what I understand, Mysterio... Chris, you're the Spider-Man guy.
Am I?
Yes.
I'm more DC. I'm a Spider-Man guy?
You've always been the Spider-Man guy. You're the only one that liked Amazing Spider-Man 2.
All right,
but no, I think he's like a Syndrome from Incredibles. I think he's like a from what I've read, he's like a fake super guy, and he uses special effects, like Hollywood special effects, to make monsters appear so he can be a hero guy. And
let's see,
and I think that's the direction they're going in this movie too. And I think the elementals are all gonna, I don't know, but I think it's all gonna be like hallucinations and illusions that he makes so that he can play the hero. I think. I mean, my sister was bringing up an interesting point about, because we were talking about specifically Far From Home, and she was saying like, oh, maybe it's a thing where he thinks that we need to project strength and we need to show the world that the superheroes are back and bring positivity to the world, but he's all weird about how he goes about it. You know what I mean? Like it could be something like that.
Yeah,
that would be an interesting take, I think.
That actually sounds more likely.
Yeah, that'd be a cool way to connect it to everything that just happened without having it be so plot heavy that you could still watch it and enjoy it on its own. I think is probably, hopefully, I don't know.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah. But yeah.
What was that what you were going at, Chewy, about in terms of what's moving forward? Or did you have
I wanted to talk about just like the very few things that were left unresolved and what it might look like, and also just what the future of the MCU would look like. I mean, we mentioned it earlier, but I'm really interested in the Gamora. The idea that they reset her character development, basically. Yeah. We know it's going to come back because he's looking for her. That's too big of a thing. When something is that obviously spelled out in the MCU, it always comes back. So I think just the idea of doing a sequel where, like, you got to deal with the idea like, oh, this is an alternate dimension version of my girlfriend. What do we do now? I think I think there's a lot of room for comedy in that situation too, which the Guardians series lends itself to. I think tonally that's a great plot setup. I think that's really exciting.
I'm just remembering the ball joke in the movie. I forgot about that until you just brought it up.
Quill has like two scenes in the entire movie. One of them's the ball joke scene, and the other's the last, like one of the last with Thor.
Yeah.
And people calling him an idiot, which is really funny. I think it kind of too, because I think like everyone blamed Infinity War on Quill. Yeah. So this one, they're just like, yeah, he's an idiot. Everyone knows he's an
idiot. So it was kind of weird, right? So obviously there's that line where Iron Man was like, is this the one, right? And Doctor Strange is like, oh, if I told you it was the one, then it's not the one. But then at the end, he tells him he gives him the sign. He's like, yeah, this is the one. This is the moment, right? It's just weird that Tony Stark knew immediately what to do in that moment.
Not that weird.
I think he gets it, because it's like, he probably thought, okay, why would Doctor Strange give up the stone, even when he said earlier in Infinity War that if it became between Tony and the Time Stone, he wouldn't mind sacrificing him. So Tony knew that he was integral to the one reality happening.
Well, no, he knew, but the moment he sees the signal, right, which he didn't know was coming, he sees Doctor Strange point the finger, right, he immediately is like, I'm snatching those stones.
I have an answer for you. Okay. Doctor Strange foresaw that if he put his finger in the air, Tony would know what to do.
Damn it.
Sorry.
That's good.
It's the same reason why he knew that if he told him specifically too many details, it wouldn't work. There you go.
Beautiful.
They worked out those hand signals off screen.
That works too. Chris. Yeah. or it was arbitrary. He made a hand signal. Tony didn't even see it. He just made his decision on his own. It was a coincidence. We don't know.
All valid.
Excellent.
Yeah. Well, unless there's much else to say, let me end the discussion with this.
Good.
Let me pose this question to you guys.
Time
is this film, and by extension, the entire MCU, the greatest cinematic achievement? I don't mean the greatest films or the best films, but the greatest cinematic achievement ever?
Top 3.
Okay.
I mean, that leaves me non-committal. It could be number 1. I don't know. Definitely top 3. I can commit to that.
I would say it is.
I don't know.
I think I'm in the it is boat. I think it is.
It was definitely the most ambitious and the most likely to fail. I'll say that. And the fact that it didn't makes it significant.
I mean, like, it's just kind of a testament to how much focus and effort they put into this. I think this is the 23rd film. The 23rd, 22nd film in, like, a cinematic universe would be the one I'm most excited to see. Like,
how are you not tired by then? That's crazy.
How am I not tired? It doesn't make any sense. Like, it really doesn't.
I'm tired.
About how many other...
we all know you're tired, Chris.
I was waiting for you to say that, Chris. I just want you to know that's how predictable you've come in your hatred for Marvel. I was like, any second, 3, 2, 1, I'm tired.
You think that I hate Marvel? I don't hate Marvel.
I'm using hate as shorthand. I know you don't hate it.
I mean, shouldn't you be happy? Ant-Man's your favorite Marvel character.
Ant-Man?
Ant-Man? Saved the day. It was all Ant-Man all the time, this movie.
Wait, you guys, was there a Celery Man reference in there? Because I'm pretty sure there was.
I'd have to see it again specifically to look for it.
Didn't he drink a cup of coffee or something? And, like, sit at a computer? I'm pretty sure he did.
Well, one of the Tim and Eric's, which was it, Eric? One of them showed up in Ant-Man 2. That's, I think, as close we're going to get.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Tim Heidecker.
No, Tim Heidecker was the boat, like, tour guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just would have been so funny if, like, he was, like, sitting there with Tony Stark and he's like, all right, we have important work to do.
That would have been awesome.
He could have just thrown that line in there. Paul, like, you guys, this line's going to work. Trust me. Just let me say it.
Well, I mean, yeah, I loved it. I know we had small issues with it, some more than others, but I just love this film. I mean, watching Spider-Man fly across the sky, attached to Mjolnir, getting saved by Valkyrie on a Pegasus with a rocket, like that whole scene.
Nonsense.
I don't think I've really fully reveled and appreciated though. Just sheer visceral, pure, like not even entertainment, just like, I don't know.
Nonsense.
It was gluttonous.
Nonsense.
That whole scene. And then Ant-Man giantly punching that space snake monster and like everything that was happening. It was like too much. It was just like, I don't have enough sensory input nodes on my body to fully appreciate what is happening in front of me.
Captain America finally says Avengers assemble and they start assembling and I'm like, I can't see everybody. There's too many of them. I can't see them all.
Like, there were so many good, and I would say this movie is fan service in like the best possible way.
I mean, and they kept upping the ante because I remember thinking that for Civil War, like, oh my god, that fight scene in the airport in Civil War, they're never going to top that.
I thought that for Avengers.
And then Infinity,
you're like, there's 6 of them. There's 6 of them in a circle. How did we?
There are literally like 43 hero characters that are flying and like shrinking and running like. I think I even said to Ryan because I saw it with Ryan the first time I saw it. I was like, they could have ended the film and that shot of both of the fronts of the battle clashing and ended the film right then, and I would have walked out like on the highest of possible highs you could walk. Like it was just so like, oh my god, what's happening in front of me?
So you're saying the movie should have pulled a George Costanza and left on a high note?
Yes.
Just fade to black right as the armies are charging.
Sorry, I just wanted to inject.
We had to fanboy out a little bit.
Joy fanboy.
How many
we
people
got two cerebral
thought that,
discussions.
How many people thought that they were going to kill Captain America in that fight?
I did.
I mean, I don't know. I kind of suspect a little, like that scene. Also, that shot of him standing alone.
Oh, I want that my
with
desktop.
The forces of evil.
I want that as my computer desktop. That shot is incredible. I can't wait for a 4K screenshot.
It was very reminiscent of, and Chewie and Chris, you're not going to understand this, when Jon Snow is standing there and Ramsay's army is charging in the Battle of the Bastards, Sean.
I mean, it has the same. I mean,
potty
film
language
you're talking about, but it has that same. Just like those are the things you go. That's what I'm talking about. When you go to the films, you want to believe the impossible, and by God, it did it in this film. That's what I like. I can't think of a better praise than I believed every freaking second of whatever craziness was happening on screen. I was there.
Yeah, for it, I was there for it. I came out for it. Pegasus is an all. What a spectacle! I was not already.
I'm glad I was able to save you from getting spoiled.
I appreciate that.
We had
a communication group chat faux pas, but thank you. I appreciate that. I went in unspoiled miraculously. I had to wait 4 whole days to see it, which first world problems, but still, I felt like everybody on Facebook was posting about seeing it on Thursday night, and I'm like, oh man, how am I gonna make it to the end of the weekend? But miraculously, I did it, and what a good time! What a good time! We're almost at the 2-hour mark, so we should probably be making some final remarks here.
Yeah, let's wrap it up.
This up.
Coming up, I think Vince and Ryan and I are avid Game of Thrones fans and watchers, so I think we're going to try to do a Game of Thrones episode
Knock
or 2.
Yourselves out,
as we are in the finals. This weekend, by the way, was just another gluttonous weekend in pop culture entertainment. Game of Thrones episode aired that was maybe arguably one of the most epic episodes of television ever filmed, aired, and seen, and Avengers Endgame came out the same weekend.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
The most significant thing coming up next is Detective Pikachu, because,
I am actually really
within a month, you're going to get the finale of the Marvel Universe, the finale of Game of Thrones, and the Curse Breaker for the video game movie genre. Yes. We're getting the Curse Breaker.
Oh. What an age we live in. What
you
an
really
age
think
we live in for entertainment.
There was an article I shared with my sister. I think it was on Collider. But the title of the article is "Early Reactions to Detective Pikachu Imply It Might Be the Curse Breaker." That was the name of the article. So
think about this. So we have Detective Pikachu. The week after that, we have John Wick 3. The week after that, we have Aladdin. The week after that is Godzilla.
Well, it's the season. We're here. I mean, we're a couple days till May is the official start of summer as far as Hollywood's concerned. So we're just on its doorstep here, and we're gonna have stuff every week, I think.
Also, did everybody get to see that Godzilla preview before the movie?
Yeah, it was nuts.
I am honestly really looking forward to that movie.
I can go either way. I don't know. I'm kind of indifferent on it, but
we'll see.
Speaking of movies that a lot of people are indifferent on, I'm excited about. I'm actually super excited for Aladdin. I realize that because there's no stakes at all. If they screw up this movie, who cares? But I actually have come to the point where I think Will Smith as Genie is inspired, brilliant, perfect casting, regardless if this movie's good or bad. So I'm excited for that one. Pikachu. What else we got coming up?
What about Lion King?
I'm not. The thing is that Lion King is I'm too emotionally attached to Lion King, and it's far more likely that movie's going to disappoint.
They'll mess and you'll be disappointed. So you can't get your heart.
Also, just those hyper CG realistic looking CG animals just don't emote enough for me to get emotionally invested in them. I think
it is really weird. It's like a live action Lion King, but all CG. What's the point? Just make it another CG.
If it's going to be that hyper realistic, I'm not going to be able to take it seriously if they're singing a sad ballad. And it's a weird, you know what I mean? That's why I think that Aladdin is campy enough and goofy enough, and that I feel like it has a better chance of being entertaining than Lion King does. Yeah. But there's a lot to look forward to. I mean, it's a jam-packed summer. There's a lot to look forward to.
Yep. Well, Chewy, before you do your promo, I wanted to at least mention that because we always complain that no one does this, and we actually have someone who did this time, so I would be remiss if we did not mention it on the air at the end of the episode. But we got an email. We got an email from a listener.
Oh, cool.
It's short and sweet. I'm going to read it. We could address it, but I would say let's think about it. We can maybe address it next episode. But anyways, this is from Lee White, who is a friend of mine. So subject, hey, how you doing? Question for your next podcast, if you so desire. You spent much of the Us episode discussing how many problems there were with the plot and the world the film built, but you all ultimately still seem to like it a lot. Why did this film get the benefit of the doubt with those numerous issues when many others might not? I'll take my answers off the air. Thanks. So we don't have to answer it.
He says off the air, so we should not talk about it on there?
Just... Yeah, I don't know. He doesn't want us to talk about it.
Oh.
I mean, we can talk about it if you want, but we could also message him or talk to him personally.
Okay.
Anyways, but thank you for writing me.
Yeah.
And we hope others will write. I think we promised something if like 5 people wrote. So we have 1 email. 4 more emails to go until whatever we promised.
We have to go back and listen to whichever episode to figure out what we promised.
No, but seriously, thanks for writing me. And please, other people write. We will read it if you write.
Yes, we will, because nobody else is. So you're guaranteed. You're first in line. All right.
But does anyone have any initial thoughts to his question? If we want to, we don't have to.
Things aren't black and white, and I think finding criticisms is more of an issue. There's more meat to talk about with those conversations, and no movie's perfect. So, I mean, I think sitting there and fanboying is fun sometimes, but if it's a given that the movie's good, I think it's more worth our time to spend it on the areas that can be improved. I think it makes for better conversation. That's my perspective.
Yeah, I mean, like we do that because, I mean, like when you're sitting down watching a film, it's like kind of like your emotions are at the forefront and not so much your analytical mind. And so, like, you can react to what you're visually seeing, but then when you have time to think about it, as in, like, when we have our discussions, we think we're talking about the plot, and that's when you can kind of, you discuss those inconsistencies, or you start having questions about why characters did what they did. And that's not necessarily to say that you hated the movie. It's just then trying to, analyze it as critically as you can and, as in-depth as you can. And that's why we do it. And I think you can only really do it with well-made films, I think, in a good way.
Right. I mean, if a movie's a train wreck, where do you start? But yeah, I agree with everything you said. And also just, we all have different brains. So somebody's going to bring up a perspective that you're never going to bring up on your own. So it's, it's good to bounce off each other and pick these things apart. It's fun to pick things apart. It's fun.
It is. We've been doing it a long time.
Yes. Mostly about cartoons, but whatever. All right. Cool. Well, if there's nothing else, I'll go ahead and we're really almost at the 2-hour mark now. So, I think, we did a really.
If any film deserves it,
it's 11 years in the making, so why not? But I'll go ahead and put this episode out of its misery. I think, right? Okay.
Time heist.
Time heist. Kill it if you have to. All right. So this has been After the Credits, a YumChunks podcast. We are listened to on the original YumChunks YouTube channel. We're also able to be found on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Radio Public, and a few other ones that I always forget about. But the point is, if you Google YumChunks Podcast, you can listen to us on probably whatever your favorite podcast outlet is. If you want to reach us, leave a comment on any of those that have comment sections, or email us at yumchunks@gmail.com. Whatever you feel like, questions, comments, criticisms, we can do that. And that is the episode. Go ahead.
I think we're gonna try to get on Stitcher too. I've gotten requests from other friends that's a common thing that we should try to get on. So we're gonna look into that. Hopefully this episode, if not this episode, the next one will be on Stitcher.
Cool. Well, that's it. That's the episode, guys. Vince, say goodbye. Sign us off. Say something funny. Say something scrappy, Vince.
Sometimes you're a raccoon, and other times you're making sandwiches with War Machine.
That is a... Good night, everyone.
This has been
After the Credits,
a YumChunks podcast.